Hey everyone, this is Dave Jeffers. Started this YouTube channel. This is my first video, so this is exciting. And of course the whole channel, as you found out, is called Dave Jeffers Healing Art. Now I use art as part of a healing process that I've been going through for years. The healing process has to do with abuse I suffered when I was younger. As many of you, I hope this finds a lot of people that are going through the same thing I did. Not going through it anymore, thank God, but I did for years and years and years, and how I've used art to help with that. So this painting here, this is a process I've already done. I consider this what's called an underpainting, or a sketch. Even though I know it's full of color, but I had this down in my cellar. This actually was made with some spray paint and some different things to get this texture feeling that you see on here now. This is where I start. It's not where I finish. This is how I'm getting going. So from here, I'm going to build the rest of my painting. Right now I have red, I have yellows, I have some orange, but the orange is only there because the red and the yellow have kind of mixed together, so it gave me a different value. And there's some white on here, most of it covered now, but some of this is actually the panel underneath. You can see where the white is. That's actually the canvas underneath. And so I'm going to start the painting by using some red. Even though there's already red on there, I'm going to enhance some of what I see. And what I'm saying, this whole channel that I'm using right now, that I'm starting, is for people who went through what I went through. Now, I was abused from a very early age, and that abuse cost me, well, all my self-esteem for a while. Cost me all my self-confidence. Cost me a lot of things. Cost me friends. I couldn't make any friends when I was younger because, let's face it, I was weird. I know that's strange to say that, and you say I wasn't weird. Yes, I was weird. Not because of anything I had done. It was my response to the abuse I was taking. Almost on a daily basis. Almost. Now, here's what happened to me. Maybe some of you can resonate with this. For a long time, the abuse, I put it out of my mind. I just didn't remember it. Now, here's how I did remember it, though. Instead of remembering my dad abusing me, and I may as well say it was abuse from my father, I had these horrible nightmares of things that didn't make any sense. What nightmares do make sense, but, strange creatures and things that just were weird. And I was tortured by the same nightmares over and over and over again. Now, one I had, I got to tell you about, it won't seem like it'd be scary, but it is something that scared me to death. I would have this experience that I was walking through my house. The TV was on, it all seemed like a normal thing. Then all of a sudden I'd realize something's not right. Did you ever get that feeling during a nightmare or a dream? And all of a sudden you're like, and I thought to myself, am I awake right now? Am I dreaming? Is this real? And it would always be the same dream. I'd be walking through a little hallway that led from our living room to our kitchen. And my parents' bedroom would be on the right, and in the middle there was kind of one of those dining rooms, that it's there but no one ever really uses it. Kind of a dining room only for look's sake. No one ever ate there. It was just there to look at, kind of. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And I was going to the kitchen, and all of a sudden I get this terrible feeling that something wasn't right. And I'd stop. And I'd look through the kitchen, and the kitchen had one of those old-fashioned retro tables, that now everyone wants them. They're made of like tin. Everything was tin and metal. And it was a retro table, I'll call it. People want them now. And they cost a lot of money. They were the cheapest thing back then. They were the tables you got when you couldn't afford the fancy wooden ones. Now, like I said, they're worth a ton of money. And I would look, and at the end of the hallway, just on the other side of the refrigerator, was a closet door that was always open just a little bit. I don't know why, but it was always, cracked open. And when this dream occurred, all of a sudden I'd look up and I'd see that doorway. And through the doorway would come this odd-looking small creature. How do I explain it? You're going to think this is weird, but it kind of looked like one of the... Oh, do you remember when... what was the name of that song? When Heard It to the Grapevine was big and they had the singing raisins? You remember that? Some of you will know what I'm talking about. Some of you are like, what are you talking about? Look it up on YouTube or look it up on Google. And it kind of looked like them, only evil face, long teeth, claws. Anyone else might think it might stop and laugh during a nightmare like this. But for me, this was horrifying somehow. And there were rules to this dream. During this dream, I had to be able to turn back, get through the hallway that I had just come down through, and get to the living room. And if I could get to the living room, if I could dive in there, the dream would be over and I'd be safe. And every time, I would just barely make it. This thing would come barreling out of the closet, and it would tear off after me, and I would just make it. And the rules of my nightmare were, as long as I was fast enough to get there, everything would be fine. But I knew deep inside my head, if I didn't make it, something terrible would happen to me. What, I don't know. But I just had that realization the entire time I was having this dream. Years later, I came to realize what this was. But the only time this dream stopped, one day I didn't make it. I knew you probably knew that was coming. I didn't make it. The thing had me by the foot. I didn't make it to the living room. I didn't make it to my safe zone. And during this dream, I defeated it. I think I punched it in the stomach or something like that, and it came running off. It went running off, squealing. And that's the last time I had that dream. So I don't know, for years I'm like, well, what was that all about? But I never had that dream again. That sequence just stopped, which is a miracle right there. Usually you can't stop your nightmares just by... Anyway, this time I defeated it. But it was over. And for years I thought, it probably was just a fear, represented some fear I had, and and I defeated it. So psychologically, I suppose if I told a psychiatrist about it, he'd say, well, you defeated your fear. And so good for you, your fear left because you no longer were afraid of that thing. And that seemed like good. But I realized years later, the creature that was chasing me looked a lot like my father. And it was this little devil kind of thing. And it was coming after me. And even though it was little, tiny, compared to me, and I shouldn't have been afraid really of it because it was so tiny and minuscule, it scared the death out of me. And I realized it was my father chasing me. And as long as I got to my safe zone, now I don't know what the safe zone represented. Maybe it represented getting someplace crowded so that my father couldn't get away with it. Getting somewhere where he could be seen, because people who abuse and do things to people do so in secret most of the time. And maybe that was the whole thing. I got somewhere where he couldn't do it without being seen by others, and I don't know. That's just guessing. That is just a guess. But, maybe it was something like that. But I realized not till years later, though, that it was my father's face. Isn't that strange? See, I didn't remember my dad's abuse. I didn't remember any of it. I couldn't sit and remember the things he did to me. And I know now I've talked to different source psychologists, of course, and I've had therapy and things like that. And that it makes sense. My mind, I was too little, couldn't deal with it. So my mind said, okay, we're not going to deal with it. I buried it. But it came out in dreams and nightmares and things like that. Maybe some of you can resonate with that. And I hope this helps somebody. If you're having those weird nightmares, you're like, geez, I'm weird. For years I thought, I'm weird. Who has dreams like this? There's something wrong with me. And that's part of the horror of living through that. You don't think when you're a little kid, well, it's the adult's fault. You just think as you grow up, geez, I have no friends. I prefer being alone. I loved my alone time. I didn't, I didn't have any friends because I was just strange. And my whole time growing up, going through school, was bad. There were bullies, and or people just didn't bother with me at all. They just didn't have anything to do with me because I was a weird kid. So if any of you have gone through that, I can just say to you, I understand completely. Because that's what we do. Our mind protects us. Our mind says, you know what, it's too much. Remembering what was done to him is too much. So your mind protecting you says, we're not going to remember that. But even though your mind is powerful and it wants to protect you, it comes out in other ways. It comes out in the way you act. It comes out in the way you deal with other people. In my case, I didn't deal with other people. I just didn't bother. But I had all kinds of problems. I went through all kinds of bad things. My whole time growing up, I had a weak bladder, so when other kids were able to, go over other kids' houses and have fun, I couldn't do that because I was older and I might wet the bed. You talk about embarrassing, and I just didn't. And even when I got a couple kids that were sort of friends, but not really, you know the kind I mean, right? Of course, I went over their house, stayed, and during the night, beat my pants. And you talk about embarrassment, I had to deal with that. And of course, they found out. I tried to stay in bed, and so no one would see. The person who had me over, the mom, knew that might happen because my mom had talked to her and said, anyway, you know what I mean. It's hard even to talk about now because you're not supposed to have that problem at that age, even though a lot of kids did. But when you're going through it, you don't see it that way. You see it as I'm the only kid in the world that has to go through this. And it's demeaning. It's, there's just nothing positive about it, is there? People are like, let's see the positive in it. Well, there was no positive in that, because you're over someone else's house and you just want to be like all the other kids. And instead, you're the weird kid who goes to the bathroom in his pants when he's too old to be doing that. And so we're talking about healing art. So I started drawing, I started painting. I said all that to say this, that I found a lot of release in drawing and painting. This, in case you're wondering, is oil paint I'm using now. I'm oil painting this, and I'm following some of the designs that were made by the process I talked about before, where I use spray paint, and I go down and I use some thinner to create designs. And now that I've been doing it for quite a while, I'm pretty much in control of it. I know exactly what's going to happen, but sometimes I like not to be in control a little bit too. I remember Pablo Picasso saying, and he talked about his artwork, he said, I'm as surprised as anyone when I see what my artwork comes out looking like. And that is pretty cool. That he liked the process of not really knowing what he was going to come up with. He wanted to be surprised like a kid at Christmas. The fun of Christmas is not knowing what you're going to get, is having all those presents magically appear at the tree, and you had dreams of Santa, and the next morning all that stuff's going to be there, and you just want it to last and last and last, that feeling forever, don't you? You just want it to go on and on. And so I used art to heal. I started out drawing, I copied things I saw, like all artists do. I copied I used to draw a lot of animals, dogs, cats, things like that. And I had so much fun, but that was my world. I would retreat inside my sketch pad, inside my drawings, and I didn't talk to anyone, so my artwork spoke for me. Things I couldn't say, things I didn't have the courage to say for fear of embarrassment or fear of going wrong. Because I remember, especially when I was younger, spending so much time thinking about what was going to go wrong. Because when you live like I did, or someone who abused did, something, deep inside, it's all going to go to crap. And I know it sounds funny to say that, but you just know that even if things start out good, it's not going to end well. Because somewhere lurking is the monster who just when you start to feel, good about yourself, he shows up to remind you that you're nothing. And that you're easily influenced. There's nothing you can do about it. And I mentioned the one who abused me, and he was stronger than me, he was bigger than me. I was just a little kid, and I was totally dominated. And he would say things during our sessions, I'll call them, whatever you want to call them, that to remind me. He'd say, "You're weak, you're pathetic, I'm stronger than you. There's no sense of trying not to let me do what I want because it's just going to be worse for you." And so I lived with that. And some of you right now probably are shuddering. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I hope this video reaches people that really need it. And so I'm using my art even now. Now, I don't go through it like I used to. I've had therapy and things, but I was actually involved in therapy when I was a kid. See, things would go badly for me, and I would go to my sketch pad, or I'd do an oil painting, and I would just release it all. and I would paint or draw my world as I would want it to be. The colors were bright. You know, there was no monster waiting. There was no one making fun of me. There was no reason to be afraid. All the things that just never happened in real life to me. Because real life was just not good. You know, even if my dad wasn't doing things to me, you know, because I was such a weird kid. I was a weird kid in the neighborhood. And so when people would see me, they'd pick on me. They didn't want to play with me. They wanted nothing to do with me. If they did talk to me, they said unpleasant things. You know, so who wants that? So there was no escape, really. So even when my dad wasn't around, and you think I'd feel safer, yeah, there was always somebody else ready to continue the punishment, it seemed like. Probably some of you know what I mean, because when you're going through things like that, you're seldom self-confident. You don't really stand up for yourself, because deep down you just feel like somehow it's all your fault. Must be you deserve it. You know, why else would you be going through that? I remember thinking things like that. Well, I must deserve this. You know, it must be that I deserve what I'm going through. And that's, of course, only things kids would think. But, you know, as you're growing up, here's the danger. Those feelings, if you don't deal with it, continue in life. Now, they don't show up the same way you did when you were a kid. But, you know, you get a job and you think to yourself, well, I'm never going to get promoted. I'm not good enough for this. And where does all that not good enough come from? Well, it comes from the people who hurt you. And sooner or later, your mind just, you know, you think to yourself, geez, I deserve this, so, you know, I'm never going to be anything in life. Nothing's ever going to happen good. You forget finding love or anything like that. When you get older, forget finding someone who would go out with me. You know, I didn't have any girlfriends. I had one, and she wound up being my wife. I didn't have any success with any of that. All my friends had girlfriends, and they had, you know, they seemed to be having so much fun and, you know, popular. And I was like, you know, I'm lucky if I can go one day without getting beat up or chased around or called names. A good day for me was when no one talked to me. No one talked to me, then it meant that, you know, somehow I escaped that day being made fun of or being made an example of. I'm sure that resonates with some of you. So a good day for me was a day where nothing happened. There's a song I used to listen to. It's by Billy Joel. I don't remember the name of it now, but there's a line in it saying, you know, this kind of person hears a noise outside their door and hopes that it just passes by. So, you know, a successful day for me was no one bothered me that day. You know, I didn't have to deal with people. That's sad, isn't it? I mean, how successful are you going to be if you never want to deal with people? Probably not very successful. Because no matter what you do, people are around, aren't they? And it seems to all revolve around how you can deal with people. Well, all my dealings with people sucked. They were awful. They were negative, full of pain. Full of pain. And so I avoided them. So if I went through a day and I didn't see anybody, hey, that was great. Because that meant there wasn't a chance to get hurt. Whenever there were a lot of people around, I was very quiet. I tried hard not to draw attention to myself. Because if I didn't draw attention, no one's going to bother me. And secretly, when I saw other people get picked on or made fun of, I enjoyed it because, hey, it wasn't me. You know, finally, they forgot about me. And even though that's not a good way to think, you can see why you would think that way. You know, if you're picking on someone else, it means you don't remember me. If you don't remember me, that means I probably won't have any pain because you're not going to bother me right now. And so, this whole channel that you're looking at now, and this is the first video in it, so I hope everyone who comes here, after I put more up, will come to this one first. This is about using art as healing. And I hope, even if you don't consider yourself an artist, what is an artist though? You know, I saw a whole explanation, someone talking about that. What is an artist? Does it mean you have to make a lot of money to be an artist? No. I hope you will consider using art like I did as a healing tool. Because when you're drawing on paper and pencil, or you're painting something, it's your world. You can create it. But it allows your mind to think. And during painting, especially now that I'm older, I think things like, you know what? I'm not what they said I was when I was younger. Because every now and then, that thinking will creep back in, even though I know better. You know, I'll be getting ready to start something new, and I feel those feelings creeping into my mind. Oh, you're not good enough for that. You know, you've never been successful at anything. Because a long time when I was younger, that's what I thought. Yeah, why don't, put yourself in any kind of position where people can see what you're doing, because, they're not going to like it, and they're going to make fun of you, and it's going to be miserable, because was what I had. And as a kid, you can see when you go through that, there's no other evidence to tell you otherwise. And in my case, there was none when I was younger. Now, my mom and dad, well, dad didn't, but mom tried desperately to get me out of that way of thinking. She did what she could. But it was a different generation. And she didn't do a lot of positive talking, saying, you are wonderful, you are good, you're going to be fine. Instead, she got quiet, and she would do what she could to make me feel better, but there really wasn't any positive talk. Not that she didn't hate me or anything, it wasn't because she didn't love me. I don't think she knew what to do. Because my mom, in the beginning, was a very outgoing person. And if you tried to step on my mom, you got her wrath. She knew how to defend herself. She came from a large family. The old kind of family you read about. There was a farm. They didn't have a lot of money, but they were tough people. They were a tough bunch. You mess with one, you mess with all of them. So it was hard to pick on one member of her family, because all the rest of them would come to defense. But unfortunately, when I was growing up, there was just me, my mom and dad. And my dad wasn't any help. He's the reason for a lot of my anguish. And my mom was just quietly, maybe she was trying to build me up. I don't know. I don't remember though mom ever sitting me down and saying, David, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they do. You're wonderful. None of that. She just became a very quiet person. Of course, it was because she was being abused too. So that's where I want to start this video, guys. I just want you, as you're watching me paint, just kind of relax. See the pleasant shades and colors that you like. And kind of go with that. Just relax. You don't have to do anything. A lot of people, when they used to watch Bob Ross paint, would just relax and enjoy. So that's kind of what I have to say now. We'll join you later as I'm painting and kind of talk. I hope to be a help to you if you're going through some of the things I did. Now, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, and I have to get help. So get help if it's really crippling your life. But that's where I want to encourage you now. And I'll talk to you guys next time. We'll paint again together a little bit and discuss things. Hopefully I can be a help as we use art to try to heal us. Talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for joining me.